This is Gilgamesh. I want to talk about something. Okay, this Juneteenth. Okay, what is the Emancipation Proclamation? It did not. It was Lincoln's proclamation did not end slavery. First of all, he said this in. Let's go back to when he became president. He said, "I don't have the power," which is true, "to end slavery. Only Congress can end slavery." He also said, "I don't have the inclination." He didn't care about ending slavery. And so when he makes the Emancipation Proclamation, he says, and by the way, he has no power. The South had seceded. That means it was no longer part of the United States. He says this: the secessionist states must end slavery, while the North can keep slavery. So, Juneteenth is about the enforcement. Okay, by the time this was not an American Civil War. Let's start, like I said before, the South had seceded. It was no longer part of the United States. Therefore, Lincoln had no power over it. Okay, and many of the plantations had on their own ended slavery. So, if Lincoln had left things alone, most likely the South would have on their own, because they were no longer connected, almost all the plantations would have already ended the practice of slavery, because they were no longer controlled or owned by the banking system. So this whole thing of, if you want to celebrate the actual 18th Amendment, then that came after Lincoln's death. And you would give credit to his vice president, who was a Democrat, who became president. Not Lincoln, not this, not that. Juneteenth, saying that, it's the enforcement of, only in the South, because the North was never fighting to end slavery. They were slave owners, so why would they fight to end the practice that they... So, like I said, this North were slave owners. Then this is another video where I said, I don't think the main reason the South left had to do with slavery. It had to do with over taxation. In Juneteenth, the problem with it is, when these Union soldiers went into Texas, they found there wasn't, pretty much slavery was over. Yeah, so they were enforcing something where from reporters in the North when they went in the South, a lot of plantations before the invasion of the South, because that's what it was. This was an American Civil War. This was because the South was no longer a part of the United States. Let's rename it. The invasion of the South by the North for a dictator. So you're giving power. This is basically the forceful invasion. It'd be like, let's invade Canada. And then call it, the North American Civil War. Yeah, let's call it that. It's the same thing. The South was a country at that point when it seceded. So Lincoln legally invaded another country. But yeah, the Juneteenth thing, enforcing, and it wasn't law. Emancipation Proclamation was not a legal decree. He had no power to tell the South to end slavery. They're not part of the United States. So this decree, this Juneteenth, is basically an illegal enforcement of something the North had no power to do. Lincoln didn't have the power to say, hey, you must give up your slaves. There's no legal, if the South, let's say, when Grant showed up and he didn't show up late to the meeting to end this, he showed up not drunk and late, and he would have signed admitting the North had lost. This thing would be over. The South would still be its own country. Watch what happened. They probably you would have seen slavery ended while slavery was still legal in the North. I'm just saying, the North did not fight to end slavery. So, So Juneteenth is supposed to be about the enforcement of an illegal action. Emancipation Proclamation, Lincoln had no power over the South. And he treated them like they were their own country, even though he didn't recognize them as their own country. He put a trade embargo on the South. He told England, if you come to help the South, I will go to war with you. He's treating, and he put, essentially, he put a blockade on the southern states, on the secessionist states, on their ports and everything, where they could not get anything in. So he's treating the South as if it's a country, yet then saying it's not legal for them to secede, which it was. Then he's turning around and creating an Emancipation Proclamation which says only secessionist states must abolish slavery while the North can keep their slaves. So we're literally, people are saying, yes, we're going to celebrate an illegal action by a guy who did not have the power to abolish slavery. Now, if you want to say, yes, let's have a day to celebrate the actual day of the signing of the abolition of slavery, except we didn't abolish slavery in this country. We really haven't abolished slavery because we have the prison system, which still legalizes slavery. So let that sink in. We never abolished slavery, and we do slavery in other countries. We have sweatshops in this country, in New York, that still do slavery. Yeah. We do slavery in other countries, so we never really abolished slavery at all. So this whole Juneteenth is complete horseshit. There's still slavery in America. Yeah. So why do we have a day that doesn't actually end slavery? Go figure. Yeah. So I just want to talk about that real quick, that Juneteenth is just crap when it's saying enforcing the illegal. This speech, the Emancipation Proclamation, Lincoln had no power to enforce, to end slavery. Congress can. But he didn't go that route. Instead, he gives a speech saying the secessionist South must end slavery. That's not an order he can give to a place that is no longer part of the United States. And two, he said the North can keep their slaves. So you're actually, Juneteenth was never about freeing with the end of slavery. Now, dude, his vice president, after he shot in the head by, and his vice president became president, you want to celebrate when he did sign the actual 18th Amendment, abolishing slavery? The problem is, like I said, you still have slavery called your prison system. So, yeah, Juneteenth, fabricated holiday for a illegal action by Lincoln. So, just let that sink in. This is Gilgamesh. I'll talk to you later. Bye.